I'm Don Deutsch. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the JTC1 SC38, that's the Subcommittee on Cloud Computing and Distributed Platforms. We just completed the 8th year of this committee, which is in the formal standards process, and I'm going to try to outline what we've done, where we are today, and where we're going. And I'll make a slight attempt to tie it back to the Cloud Federation topic. The scope of SC38 is described here: standardization in the areas of cloud computing and distributed platforms, including, and it provides the focus for cloud computing within the formal standards arena. For some of you, this may be common knowledge, but let me try to put a little context on the forum that we're talking about. The three big I's, ISO, IEC, and ITU, that are recognized by the World Trade Organization as legitimate places to establish international standards. ISO and IEC are two of those three, and many years ago, in the 80s, ISO and IEC realized both of them were sort of staking out the IT turf. And in an uncharacteristic and not to be repeated moment of kumbaya, ISO and IEC said, well, let's not fight, okay? Let's form a joint technical committee to work on IT standards. They formed JTC1, that's Joint Technical Committee 1. There is no JTC2, and there will not be one, okay? The good thing about JTC1 is that many of the standards that we all absolutely take for granted that makes the world in which we live today function came out of JTC1. The character code standards, the programming language standards, a lot of the protocol standards, the magnetic media standards. JTC1 established all those standards in the early days of computing, okay? In more recent days, frankly, what goes on in JTC1 tends to be the evolution, the maintenance of those foundational technical standards, and there has not been as much new work coming out of JTC1 because the work is being done in many hundreds of different forums, consortia forums, etc. Okay? SC38 was actually somewhat of a break in that phenomenon, and it was established, okay, in 2009, and it was established sort of as a leading edge of cloud computing standards. And in fact, I'm going to describe what we did. It was established in what I call the phase 1 because people wanted to set standards for web services. People wanted to set standards for SOA, and there was some suggestion that maybe we need to set standards for something about this cloud stuff. And JTC1 said, well, all this technology is somewhat related. Let's put it together. We'll call it Distributed Applications, Platforms, and Services, and let's see what comes out of it. In the first phase, SC38 was sort of trying to decide what they were about. In the second phase, they finished the distributed work and focused on cloud computing. In the third phase, they actually did something about cloud computing. And today, we're in the fourth phase where we might actually produce things that go beyond sort of this basic foundational thing. Why is JTC1 doing this work? And I think this is significant. In the past, the standards that came out of JTC1 were driven by the providers. When the providers decided the technology was mature enough that they sort of agreed on a direction, then they'd get together and they'd establish those protocols and things that are the foundation of our technology world. JTC1 started this work because users were demanding standards for cloud computing. We want cloud computing tomorrow. That means we need standards yesterday, and you, provider community, may not be ready for us, but we want standards. And what the provider community heard was, if we don't do the standards now, the governments will do it for us. So largely, government demand has driven what's going on in SC38. As I said, phase one was pretty much, let's see if this stuff makes any sense. In phase two, we actually said, well, let's do something with cloud computing, and came out with two seminal documents, ISO IEC 17788 and 17789, which are overview and vocabulary for cloud computing, and a reference architecture for cloud computing. These are not detailed technical standards. These are framework standards. These are terminology standards. But what they provide is a common ground upon which discussion can go on about this technology. In the third phase, the focus on cloud computing led us to service level agreements. Every cloud provider provides their own service level agreement. Again, demand pull. Those that were buying cloud services saying, wait a second, how do I figure out what kind of terms I want to work with? This is a four-part standard that provides a framework, not for a template for a specific service level agreement, but rather a framework for forming service level agreements using common terminology based upon the terminology standards that we described, so that the users know what it is they're buying, and they understand the kinds of terms and the framework in which they do it. I don't have time to go through the four parts, but let me just say they deal with, first of all, the general overview and concepts, but also with a model for establishing metrics and a basic way that the providers can say, okay, here's my metric for availability, describe it in the terms that the service level agreement standard gives them, so that the users can understand it, okay? We also went beyond, and in fact, we have some of the people here at the table who were involved in producing these standards, and produced a standard on interoperability and portability, not the technical way to make it happen, but the framework and the issues that have to be addressed on interoperability and portability, and also on data flow, which has to do with things such as cross-border data flow. So basically, through the first three phases, we provided sort of a foundation for follow-on work. And that's sort of where we are today. And we're updating the concepts and terminology. I don't know if that meant that my 8 minutes are up. We're looking at providing some guidance to the governments. So, okay, you produce all these standards. Well, how do they use them? And from a provider perspective, how do we want governments to use the standards that we provided them? Okay, and we've got some substantial new initiatives ongoing. One is working on a document in the area of edge computing, and working on a framework for trust. I guess one thing I neglected to mention in the service level agreement standard, that four-part standard, the fourth part is security. And again, it's sort of uncharacteristic of a standards committee, because standards committees like to keep things really close to the vest, like we're the experts. SC38 realized we aren't the security experts. They're in JTC 1SC27. So that part of the standards being developed by the security experts will be published in the four parts as all numbered thing that you can all get together, but you can be confident that that security part came from those that know what they're talking about. Okay, and we do have a proposal from China to work in the area of metering and billing, and they've gone off to try to see if they can come up with a project which the rest of the world is satisfied with. Basically, to this date, what SC38 has done has been addressing government's requirements for cloud computing, the kinds of requirements that we see as a user demand pull. We have 2 government representatives here. They're working on intercloud. Our stuff could provide a foundation. We could go in that direction, but to date, that has not happened. I think it's very positive. Notice that one of the things Bob Bond's presentation indicated was that should they be successful in producing this standard, the intention would be to transpose it into an international standard. Why do you care about that? Well, I care about it as a technology provider because I want to provide one product to a worldwide market. You care about it because if I have to provide multiple products to multiple geographies, whatever you buy from me is going to cost more. So that's it. Thank you.
Panasonic.